Hello and welcome to another episode of Into the Afroverse. I'm your host, William Jones, and Into the Afroverse is where we're taking Black folks into the future. Today we are rejoined by Mr. Jennings. You recall from our previous conversation, having this great talk around Afrofuturism and the work that he's done in it. And with all great conversations, the time moves so quickly. So I asked him to come on to do another episode, and he agreed to do that. So we certainly are appreciative of his time. And for those of you that missed it, first of all, you want to go back and catch it. But to reintroduce him, Jennings is a professor, an author, a graphic novelist, curator, Harvard Fellow, New York Times bestseller, 2018 Eisner Award winner, and an all-around champion of Black culture. And there's so many other things to this guy's resume, but I really want him to share with us what he's been working on, what he has worked on. So, John, welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you for having me back. It's great.
Yeah, so, last time we were talking about Afrofuturism, its meaning, its origins, where it looks like it's moving in the future, and your role in helping to direct it, helping to shape it, helping to grow it. But we didn't get an opportunity to talk about specifically some of the work that you have done and some of the things that are out now currently that
Hmm.
folks can, read and investigate and see the great work that you've been doing. So, what do you want to share with the audience in terms of the stuff that you have done and what you're currently working on?
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity. So I've been working with my good friend Bill Campbell at Rosarian Publishing for many years now. I think it's been over a decade now. So you can find a graphic novel that I did with him called Blue Hand Mojo, Hard
Mhm.
Times Road. It's one of my pet projects. It's a character that I created from scratch. I'm originally from Mississippi, and it features a character who is like the fictitious cousin of Robert Johnson, the legendary blues man,
Yeah,
and he becomes a conjure man, and he basically makes a similar deal with the devil at the crossroads. As Robert Johnson supposedly sold his soul to the devil to become a virtuoso guitarist, right, blues
right.
guitarist. And yeah, so but his cousin Frank, Frank Johnson, he becomes a really powerful conjure man, and he wants the power to exact revenge against the racist white folk who kill his family, right?
Hmm.
And then he immediately regrets it. He ends up basically working for Scratch, the devil, to kind of collect souls and to try to figure out a way to get out of his contract with them. So it's set in like 1930s, and he migrates up from Mississippi to Chicago. So it's situated in like it's after Capone goes to jail. So it's like, it's still doing, I think it's like around Prohibition era, that kind of thing. So it's
Right.
our first graphic novel is out. It's one of my favorite things. But it's kind of like if John Constantine and Easy Rollins would like fuse together, so he has that kind of attitude. Yeah, so that's one of my favorite things. One of the things, of course, that really kind of catapulted me and my friend Damien into the spotlight a lot more was the fact that we got a chance to adapt Kindred,
Hmm.
the graphic into a graphic novel, the legendary time travel narrative by Octavia E. Butler. It came out through Abrams Comic Arts, which is a large publisher, most known for their kids' work. Like, for instance, if you've seen like Diary of a Wimpy Kid, for
Right.
instance, that's one of their biggest titles. And so Comic Arts is part of that coalition of publishers. So yeah, so we put that out. It's successful, and because of the success of that book, I was able to actually like pitch the idea of doing an entire imprint dedicated to science fiction and fantasy by people of color, and it's called Megascope, and it's named after a device from a W.E.B. Du Bois science fiction story called The Princess Steel. And in the story, the Megascope can see through time and space, so I thought it would be a really great name for imprint, especially about this idea of uncovering work by people of color. So second book we did was Parable of Talents, excuse me, Parable of Soul. I'm working on Parable of Talents now,
Right.
which is a a book that is really kind of prescient because it deals with some of the things that are happening in our society now. Actually, that
Yes.
actually got us the Hugo Award. We actually won a Hugo Award for that adaptation. Me and Damien, and then
Hmm.
I was just nominated for a Locus Award and another Eisner for my adaptation of Media Codafor's short story On the Road into a book called After the Rain, which is the first Megascope book. So I'm doing a lot of publishing right now, working on a second Blue Hand Mojo story, doing a nonfiction book with the great Angelique Roche, which is called My Superhero is Black. We were
Okay.
contracted by Marvel and Simon and Schuster to do a guide to like Marvel's Black characters from
Oh, excellent.
1950 to current day. And that's a really so I've been working on that for 2 years actually. It just due out next year. It's due out like next summer. Uh, and so now we're in the editing process for that. Yeah, and we did a book called Box of Bones, which
Mhm.
is kind of like an anthology series. It's about these like this haunted artifact that actually has these monsters in it that actually punish people who uh, who hurt Black folk throughout the diaspora. But
Right.
there's a cost to be paid for opening the box, that kind of thing. So
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah,
All
Box of
right.
Bones. Yeah, and then also we had a star review from I think the School Library Journal actually, and then yeah, so the second book is in its way. So I'm working on a lot of stuff, man. But I'm also doing like a lot of writing. Like I just finished a short story for the Kolchak the Night Stalker collection that they're doing for his 50th anniversary. I think that's pretty cool.
Oh,
And then
you said Kolchak and Night Stalker?
the Night Stalker, yeah,
Oh man, yes.
yeah, the Night Stalker. So they ran I think I want to say Full Moon Press, but that's or maybe Moon. I forgot which publisher it is at right now, but they actually have the rights to Night Stalker, and they're doing a collection, like a comics collection for his 50th anniversary. A very successful Kickstarter. And they decided to do a prose collection too. So I wrote a prose story for it, like for this
Right.
collection. And I was like, wow, very because I used to love that character coming up. So
Yes, yes.
so yeah, man. So that's a handful of things. I mean, I could go on, but it's just like, those are things that are like happening right now. I've been doing a lot of work with my friend David Brame, uh, with my friend Mike Dando with the United Way out of Minnesota. So we're actually have this project based off of Lion Man, the original character that was created by Oren C. Evans. So we've actually updated the character, and we've actually turned it into like a project to teach kids about like culture and about comics and stuff. And so that's
Wow.
been kind of really a passion project that we've been working on, and currently working on a follow up with our original character called the Mighty Struggle, which is like
Mhm.
a black superhero character that I co-created. So
So with all of this work, and it's a lot, with all of this work, has there been any interest from movie makers, television, in terms of bringing it to the
yes,
big screen or the small screen?
yeah, actually, I have a shopping deal right now for some projects that I've been working on that I just finished putting together a deck for. So
Hmm.
that's pretty cool. Um, Two of the projects I just mentioned have been optioned, but I can't really speak about
Of
who.
course.
But it's yeah. So there are things that could happen. We'll
Hmm.
see. It's always a crapshoot, Hollywood.
Right.
But yeah. So far, like two options for TV show development. Yeah.
Excellent. So
Yeah.
hoping now when these things take off and I see it happening for you, that you want to come back and talk more about it. 'Cause
Always, man. Yeah.
yeah, I
Gotta.
appreciate it. I
Yeah.
appreciate it. So if you're just joining us, this is Into the Afroverse with your host, William Jones, here on WOL 1450 AM, 95.9 FM, and also WOLDCnews.com, where information is power. And once again, we are joined by John Jennings, and we're talking about all this magnificent work that you're doing. And we're possibly looking at, big screen, small screen stuff, but we'll wait and see. Got our fingers crossed for that. Uh, what kind of preparation goes into creating these things? A lot of times, I'm sure there's a lot of folks listening that are writers, want to be writers, create the kind of things that you're creating. I'm hearing history, I'm hearing culture, and
Hmm.
of course, your own imagination. But
Hmm.
in terms of the amount of work that goes into it, can you give us some insights into your preparation, your process?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think you kind of hit on some of the first things is like, research.
Hmm.
I think, we're all probably, you know, if you're of a certain age, you're borrowing from certain things that have affected you as a kid. I have this theory that if whatever you're into from like age 10 to 12, right? That's your thing.
That's it.
That's
Yes.
that's the thing that imprints itself. Like, so that's because that's in that kind of space where you're still a young kid and you're
Right.
starting to become a teenager, and it's that space where it's like your imagination is shifting, you're learning more things about the world, but you're also still kind of like maybe you still might have a teddy bear, you know what I'm
Right.
saying?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And that is a really interesting age. And I think for me, the things that impressed themselves, like my mom was a huge horror fan, so I've
Hmm.
always been a huge horror fan.
Hmm.
She brought me my first comic books. She started me reading mystery and science fiction and stuff like that. So
Right.
Greek mythology, African mythology, all that stuff started
Yes.
early, early, early. And so, when I started looking at the things that I was reading, and then eventually I'm not seeing exactly the most diverse representations,
Hmm.
um, I started to figure out like, well, how can I make something like this that I
Right.
can control? Something that I like,
Right.
that I actually have a little bit more agency over. So yeah, that's the first thing. It's like, all right, well, what are my influences? Because people are always trying to create something brand new, and that's
Right.
just impossible.
Yes. Exactly.
You'll die an old and broken person.
Right.
There's no such thing. There's no
Right.
such thing as an original idea. All these ideas are being rehashed. And if you look at some like superheroes, for instance, I mean, superheroes are extremely derivative.
Hmm. Yes.
They're derivative on purpose, actually.
Hmm.
That's what I like about them. And so, when I start connecting my ideas around hip hop and sampling and remixing and that kind of idea, that's what superheroes are. That's what we're just
Yeah.
sampling things from each other and remixing things, through,
Yes.
like you said, a cultural lens. And yeah, so that's kind of where I started. So, okay, what are my influences? The other thing is start small.
Hmm.
Everybody wants to create Lord of the Rings.
Right.
And you can't like first before you get to three novels, can you tell a good short story? That
Exactly.
kind of thing. So I always start small, and try to learn the craft. I
Right.
feel like, you do a 5-page comic, then you do a 20-page comic, then you do a 60-page, you know what I'm saying? You build
Right.
up, and then before you know it, you understand like how to build a story better. Um, the other thing is read broadly. I read a lot of different types of material. Like I don't just read one type of genre material.
Hmm.
I read, a lot of historical fiction. I read a lot of books on history and theory, that kind of stuff. And I watch a lot of film, because we are working in a visual medium, and a lot
Right.
of the things that you can do in comics you can kind of map them onto film and vice versa.
Right. Right.
Some of the language is even very similar, close-ups, bird's eye
Yeah.
view, establishing shot, that kind of stuff. So yeah, having a wide vocabulary around like visual culture, I think is really good. But then also, why are you making the thing? Like
Hmm.
people like right now, I was like, oh, art is too political, blah blah blah. It's like, well, art has always been political,
Exactly.
comics have always been political.
Well,
you
we
know,
know what they really want. We know what they're really saying.
they're really saying like, I don't want to see things that are not like me, that make me feel
Exactly.
uncomfortable.
Exactly.
I just wanted entertainment. I was like, yeah, but even not having a political standpoint is being apolitical is actually a political stance. You
Exactly.
can't escape it.
Right.
And yeah, so for me, I really want to try to change the world with art. You know, I'm a
Yes.
public servant.
Right.
I work for the state right now. I work for the state of California. It's my job to actually empower my students, right?
Right.
And I want to do that creatively. So yeah, I am that social justice warrior, right? I am that woke dude, you
Right.
know.
Right.
And I'm not
Right.
afraid of that, because my
Exactly.
whole thing is like, you want to stay asleep, totally fine. Do
Right.
your you do you. But I'm actually we're in a very very interesting, very very dangerous space in our country right now. And I'm like, well, yes, I want to make art that actually will open your mind.
Right.
That's what it's for. Anyway,
Excellent.
so yeah, so that's where my head is about all of that. And I
Okay.
was like, well, what is your story about? And then try to, look at things that are similar,
Hmm.
and then borrow from people that you like. You
Yeah.
emulate people that you like to start with. You write like, if you like Stephen King, write like Stephen King at first, and then
Right.
figure out why you like what he does, and then you build your style off of like what you love.
Gotcha.
You people are afraid to be like, oh, I'm copying something. I was like, no, you copy first, and then you learn how to do it.
Yeah. Just no
Right?
different than playing an instrument.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Got
That's
you.
exactly right. Yep.
Got you. Got you. Now, I want to shift gears a little bit because I want to ask you this previously, but the
Hmm.
time got away from us. Wakanda Forever. Got to
Hmm.
talk about it. You've seen the
Okay.
trailer.
Yep.
What are your thoughts in terms of, because we don't know what the movie's going to be. I'm hearing so
Yeah, that's
many definitive, like people are just arguing. I'm like, well, we've only seen a trailer, but
it's not even a trailer. It's a
right, it's a
teaser.
teaser.
It's not even a teaser. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not even a trailer.
Like, I mean, it was awesome. Great, great
I
music and
thought it was
so forth.
extremely moving, and I was
Yeah,
in my feelings when I saw it. I was like, "Oh my goodness, this is it didn't even deserve to be that good." You know what I'm
exactly.
saying? I was
So,
like, "Wow."
what are your initial thoughts? Let's say that. What are your
Well,
initial
first,
thoughts on
first of all,
Wakanda?
I am in the recasting.
Yes.
I'm in the recasting space, right?
Hmm.
You know, I do appreciate what they've said about honoring Chadwick. You know, as a remarkable human being. You know, but I do say if you and they know this, so you have to understand like the people who are running these spaces, they understand. They're very smart people. They're not idiots. They
Hmm.
know they're gonna have to recast them originally if they want the franchise to grow,
Right.
Something has to be thought of. What's really interesting about the Black Panther though is that it's a mantle that has been passed down from generation to generation, right?
Right.
So yeah, so you could have a Black Panther without a T'Challa. That's very possible, actually.
Hmm.
Because of the fact that it's a mantle. And so
Right.
you could do. But anyway, so that's my first thing. When
Hmm.
I first saw it, though, I was extremely moved by it. Um, to me, it seems like his spirit is going to haunt this film.
Yes.
I've seen people talk about, oh, there's no men in it. It's too woman centric. These types of things, and I was like, well, first of all, like I actually love women, so
Right.
it's like and I'm like, I was very excited to see what they were doing with it.
Right.
I'm a big fan of Angela Bassett, and she was killing it in that clip.
Yes, she
I
was.
really like the fact that they actually chose an actual lost society to
Yes.
be Namor's. I mean, it was based off the Mayans. It looks like it's very Mayan influence, right?
Right.
And I'm sure a lot of our Latinx brothers and sisters, Latinas, are like into this. They're like, you're sharing a space where it's like, okay, this is a huge franchise for people of the diaspora, but it also you're showcasing brown people. So
Right.
it's very, I think it's brilliant personally.
Right.
Um, as far as like what's going to jump off from the film, as you said, we don't know. We
Right.
don't know. You know, there's a lot of questions and stuff, and that's what a teaser's for.
Exactly.
I really think that we should just sit and wait
Yes.
and figure it out.
Yes.
I'm not boycotting this film. I think
No.
that's ridiculous.
Right.
I'm like,
Exactly.
I'm sorry. This is Ryan because at the helm of this movie is Ryan Coogler.
Right.
You want me to boycott the man that gave us Fruitvale Station? I
Right.
don't think so. I don't
Right.
think so.
Yeah. And
Yeah, so
it,
that's what my initial thoughts are about it. I was like, no, this is beautiful.
right.
I want to see it and figure out what's going and how this works into the rest of the MCU. So
And it just seems to me that sometimes there's a level of scrutiny when we do certain things that we give each other that we
yeah,
don't give to other films.
yes,
A certain degree of analysis, and we start digging deep. We're seeing the same thing starting to occur with what is the film called The Woman King? They're
yes,
talking about the women of Dahomey, and now starting to see all this information about that. Dahomey did this, Dahomey did that,
yes,
and
they
I'm
did.
like, so
Yep.
are we not watching films about countries that participated in the slave trade? Because that would eliminate, you know, uh, uh, a huge number of films, and it just seems to be this. I don't know where it's coming from or why it happens, but there's just this degree of analysis when we see ourselves in certain spaces that I just don't feel like we have when it comes to other properties.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely don't give each other a lot of leeway. That's for
Right,
sure. And that's unfortunate. So, this is I don't know, it's hard. I think that we're not really being empathetic about the love that this cast had for Chadwick either.
right,
You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of like shade and pain and anger being thrown at these characters.
right,
And at the end of the day, we don't control Black Panther. Black Panther is an intellectual property that is owned by Disney.
right.
That's a real thing. But it is also a multi-billion-dollar franchise.
Exactly. Right,
But you also have the delicate thing where like the star that actually played this character passed away. And it's a
right,
very unfortunate situation and it's very delicate. And I think that a lot of us are being very indelicate about our things about it. People are talking about agendas and such. And you have to
Yes.
understand, like, yes, there is an agenda in Hollywood, and that agenda is to make money.
Right. It's
The
just
agenda
that
is to make
simple.
money. That's the only agenda. There's no,
Right.
there's people who might have political leanings or whatever, but for the most part, we're talking about a genre that in the direct market is suffering. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Like comic books are booming, by the
Yes.
way. Like people like there's nothing wrong with the comic book industry, but
Right.
it's booming in like the trade press, right?
Yes.
The direct market, like the market that sells like dudes in tights beating up on other dudes in tights,
Right.
that's in a lot of trouble. And so they have to figure out a way to expand their market. And it's that simple,
Right.
No one's trying to like say, oh, to change people, to like quote unquote trick people into becoming gay or like
Right.
push this feminist agenda down my throat. None of that. No. It's
Right.
almost like it's about empowerment and everybody deserves to see themselves be powerful. It's that simple.
Got you.
And the people who usually read these comics, older white men, they're graying and dying. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Like there's it's just people who don't
Just yes.
how do you get so you have to think about it like so when comic books started there was no competition
Right.
really.
Right.
Rock and roll didn't exist, right? We
Exactly.
didn't have cable TV, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
People were buying them in droves and stuff and
Yes.
now you have these large entities. Oh, that's the other thing too, by the way. Marvel and DC are not comic book companies anymore. They
No.
haven't for a very long time. They're an aspect of a multinational conglomerates, right?
Right.
So they're not really concerned with like selling comics. That's actually like, no, we're trying to keep these intellectual properties alive and actually figure out ways to leverage, market share.
Yes.
It's a very different landscape. And these movies have actually escalated things. Like, for instance, I mean, I always say that there's no such thing as like mainstream comic books
Hmm.
because when people think mainstream, if your mama don't know what it is, it ain't mainstream.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? We might know everything about Mark Spector. My mama didn't know who Moon Knight was
Right.
until it came on TV, right?
Right.
Comics are very niche. They're very small. They're very tiny, right?
Yes.
And we think of them as they mean like this massive thing. Like no one was clocking for Iron Man until that movie made $1 billion.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
And then we have, we do a lot of navel gazing, but people don't know what these things are. Like if you put up Nova, I
Right.
loved Nova when I was a kid. People don't know what Nova is.
Yes.
Not
Exactly.
outside of
Exactly.
unless it's been a cartoon about or a video game,
Right.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's the thing. Like we're talking to each other, so it's big to us.
right.
Like, how can you not know Nova? How can you not know Moon Knight and so
Yeah,
forth? But yeah, like you
right.
said, there's a whole world of folks that are just being introduced to these characters. And yeah,
Hmm.
I gotta admit, I'm also in the recast T'Challa simply because,
Yes,
in terms of first of all, I just think he's an important character to have,
very much so.
and is instrumental, in the Marvel universe in ways that folks that don't read the comics may not be familiar with. But also, I feel like in terms of just the movie storyline, the character just got started. He just became the ruler,
Yep.
and I was curious to see what I guess the ramifications would be is like as soon as you open the borders, you get attacked by Thanos. So it's like we warned you.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know
It's
what I'm
pretty
saying?
wild, man.
So I would really love to see what happens with that. And yes, the idea of seeing Namor and the Black Panther
Excuse
clash
me.
on screen,
Oh
oh
man, it
yeah,
was pretty incredible.
exactly,
Mani Latif just did this really awesome thing on a show he pieces together. He
mm,
did this thing about looking at the trailer, and
mm,
one of the things he brought up, which I thought was really fascinating, is like, yeah, this story could have happened during the blip, you see,
right,
and I
right.
think that's a really really smart thing. Like this is actually part of the MCU. What did happen in Wakanda while
That's excellent. Yes,
yeah, another thing too is like what happens when they came back. They were gone for
right,
5 years. So what kind of like weaknesses happened? You know. Um, so yeah, I mean it's a lot of questions, and
right.
that's what a good trailer does. It's an
Yes,
excellent trailer, but
yes,
people will complain about like oh they even replaced Bob Marley's voice with a woman. I love what's her name I think her
right.
name is the singer. But at
Yes,
the end of it, they put in that Kendrick Lamar that hip hop remix. At the end,
yes,
we gonna be all right. I was like, come on now.
yes. Come on, how can you
Come on
not?
now.
Right? How can you not
How
enjoy
can
that?
you not love how can you not
Exactly,
love that?
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's a great idea. I don't want to get too far because I'm assuming
Yeah,
the
yeah,
audience that's listening, know what we're talking about, but it may be some folks that are still brand new
I
to
mean,
it.
Imani, you should check out Imani's piece because he's some interesting analytical points that I thought were really interesting. I do know
Excellent.
for a fact that whoever's wearing that Black Panther costume at the end, that's not a woman.
No,
It's not a
exactly.
woman's body.
That's what I noticed. So
Now,
I'm
yeah, so I was like, all right, so but then again, we are not seeing it in context, so it could be it could be, could be somebody else from the past too. We don't even know.
yeah,
And
because Marvel is great with those throwing you off with those trailers.
oh yeah, they'd be throwing you off for real. Like, wait, what's going on? But I'm
Hey,
gonna wait for November 11th. I'm gonna be there. I might have
oh,
on
for
white.
sure.
I
I
don't
might be
know.
there on the 10th.
Yeah, exactly. I might be on the 10th. Exactly. And but my whole thing is like these actors and creators, people like Hannah Beachler and Ruth Carter, who put their heart and soul into making these things for us to consume, they lost a brother.
Yes,
They lost someone and a loved one. You know what I'm
yes.
saying? And we're not really. I don't think a lot of us are being respectful of that. You know what I'm saying?
Agreed.
I think
Agreed.
I think that these are human beings. They're not just here for our amusement. I mean, yeah, I guess that's part of what they do, right?
Right.
But you know, these are real people and they have real feelings. And I think that Brian Coogler, he is going to. He's a great director. He's a
Right.
great director and a great writer. You know, and he has made a career of telling great stories about Black men,
100%. Yeah.
primarily.
Let's have some
Primarily.
confidence in them.
Yeah, I have confidence in Kugler. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? I trust him. And I don't think he's going to put out something that's going to diminish Chadwick or Black Panther or anything like that. And
Agreed.
he is working in constraints.
Yes.
Disney has a vision. It's a very corporate structure. I know this from experience.
Hmm.
So, let's just wait and see. you
Yes.
know?
So so we geeked out there for a minute.
Yes.
So, but ladies and gentlemen, once again, we are up against it. I can't believe the time moved so quickly. Really enjoyed the conversation, both parts, and I want to thank you again for joining us on Into the Afroverse. And like I said, as you are progressing and having more and more success with what you're doing, I would love to have you back. So
Oh,
we are
no.
joined.
Well, hey, I would love to, man. I love talking to you. So,
Excellent. So we are joined by John Jennings, and you can find him on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, John Jennings. That's how we will find you.
hmm Yeah,
Excellent.
Instagram is John Jennings Art. My website, you can contact me through my website, John Jennings Studio, and
Hmm.
I'm J.I. Jennings on Twitter.
Excellent. So we are out of time. This is William Jones into the Afroverse. We're taking Black folks into the future. Once again, thank you, Brother Jennings, for coming. And a special shout out to Mr. Duke Productions, the team behind today's episode. Enjoy your day, ladies and gentlemen. Take care.